It was a Saturday, the day when the Vikings bathed. The English were well aware of this custom of theirs.
Vinland Saga is easily one of my most recommended pieces of content. I mean, seriously, this is one of those shows that I throw in the face of anyone who attempts to say anime is just for kids.
Read!
Like, it's more than just a cartoon, Mom. Its maturity doesn't just stem from the gore and violence in the show, and that's what's so great about it. On top of fight scenes that are so badass and well animated it gets your blood pumping, there are also deep subjects that arise throughout the show. And I don't mean the I'm 13 and this is deep. I'm talking about deep that will have you standing in your bedroom at 3 a.m., fighting invisible demons, planning to fix your entire life, and learning to forgive all those who've wronged you to eventually become a bigger, better person type deep. If it's not obvious, I'm very passionate about this show, and will need to go into various details which will be reviewing the entire show, so obviously, major spoilers. So if you do still want to watch the show, go do that. I very highly recommend it. If you don't care or have already watched it, then get ready to dive deep into what is the Duality of Man, featured in Vinland Saga. Chapter 1. Childhood. This show takes place through the perspective of a young boy in Greenland who is 6 years old. His name is Thorfinn, son of Thors. He is seen doing various tasks around his family's farm, paling for water and feeding cows and sheep in the freezing cold. However, we are let in on his childlike wonder, as he is regaled by stories of adventure from his father's friend Leif, who speaks of a discovered land nearby, one that is much more bountiful and warm, land where there's plants and wildlife as far as the eye can see. A land in which he named Vinland. The other kids laugh at Leif because their fathers had called him a child with a beard who was useless on their adventures. But Thorfinn's childlike wonder leads him to asking Leif about his ancestors. Leif explained to Thorfinn that his ancestors ran from their previous home due to mass slaughter and chaos, which upsets Thorfinn because he believes his ancestors were too mighty to simply run away, so he goes home to ask his father. Upon coming home, he finds his father resuscitating a mysterious runaway slave who froze outside in the cold. After reviving the man, he pleaded not to be brought back to his owners, especially in his poor condition. At this time at the docks arrives the slave's owner looking for him. A man bearing chains in his hands asking about his runaway slave, wanting to know if anyone has seen him. One man from each group begin to argue with each other over past encounters in the battlefield. This argument caused one of the slave owner's men to lash out and draw his sword, only to be quickly stopped by the slave owner. After being escorted to Thorfinn's home, the slave owner asked Thors to give back his property. Thors negotiated to buy the man in exchange for 8 valuable sheep from his farm. Shortly after this trade, the slave moves on to the next life, in which Thorfinn and his family properly bury him. The first episode is the catalyst for the entire series, introducing darker themes of war and slave trade, which began to open the eyes of young Thorfinn and beginning his transition from childhood and causing him to see just how dark and cruel the world around him truly is, seeing the evil that resides in men who wish to conquer and grow their riches in comparison to his family, who simply just wants to live a peaceful life together. As the slave was dying, Thorfinn's father told him about Vinland, emphasizing that it was a peaceful land with no war or slaves, asking him to move there with them one day just before his passing. Vinland is commonly used from this point in the series forward as a symbol of escapism, which is the tendency to escape from the real world to the safety and comfort of a fantasy one. I think the reason that reaching Vinland is such a relatable goal to us in the present day is because of its romanticism of true freedom from burden, drawing an interesting juxtaposition to the real world and escaping stress in life such as financial burden. It also highlights the difference between the different types of men in this world, those who wish to escape burden by moving to a land of peace and prosperity, and those who take advantage of the world's turmoil and use the darkest parts of it to reach their goals. Chapter 2: Reawakening. The second episode begins showing the kids playing war with various wooden weapons, lying in the snow and playing dead when they've been killed by their friends. However, their game is brought to a halt whenever a warship full of men known as the Jom's Vikings arrive at their docks requesting to speak with Tors the Troll. This is when it's revealed to the village in Thorfinn that Tors was a former captain of the Jom's Vikings, who was very effective and respected on the battlefield until he eventually became fed up with the pointless killing and deserted his post to find a more peaceful life. The man leading the search for Tors, Loki, tells him that the Jom's Vikings will forgive him for his disgraceful abandonment if he agrees to go and fight in the war in England. Tors is hesitant, until the man threatens to bring harm to the village if Tors doesn't agree. Being left with no choice, Tors agrees to go to war, causing the man to announce to the village that Tors will be aiding the Jom's Vikings and will lead a warship of the strongest soldiers in the village. Now, this scene in particular brings one of my favorite shots in the entire series. This news causes the men and boys who haven't seen the hells of war to cheer in excitement, ready to fight on the battlefield. But in the center of everyone's excitement is a defeated Tors with a sickening look, slouched over and defeated. No one else here has experienced war. To them, it's still all just a game, pretending to lie dead in the snow, excited for the next round. Thorfinn, upon hearing of his father's prowess on the battlefield, begins to play too rough, injuring many of his friends. The excitement of conflict burns deep in Thorfinn's heart as he goes home to replace his wooden equipment with a real weapon. After digging through his father's stuff, he finds a dagger leading to one of the best foreshadowing events in the series that I don't think I can give justice by explaining, so just see what I'm talking about.
Oh.
剣が欲しいか、トルフィン。剣は人を殺す道具だ。お前はこれで誰を殺すつもりなんだ。
敵。
お前の敵は誰なんだ。
ハーフ団とか。
よく聞け、トルフィン。お前に敵などいない。誰にも敵などいないんだ。傷つけて良いものなどどこにもいない。
Seriously, rewatching this scene gives me goosebumps as to how pivotal it becomes later in the series. A father who's killed many and comes to realize the errors in his ways sheds his blood on his son's dagger to demonstrate to him the dangers of war, creating such a strong symbolism it gives me goosebumps for a second time just talking about it. Seriously, I don't know who at Wit Studio was responsible for putting this scene, but they let that man fucking cook. This shit is so good. Afterwards, we get this wholesome scene where Tors tells his wife to please take care of Thorfinn while he's away. Meanwhile, the man who gave Tors his war ultimatum is seen having a meeting with a new character by the name of Askeladd, who leads a separate band of rambunctious Vikings and negotiates a trade of 5 pounds of gold in exchange for Tor's head. Like this motherfucker. The audacity. He finds Tor after 10 years of him going missing and gets Tor to agree to join the war just to switch up and actually arrange for his murder. I mean, I get why he does it. It is because after arriving to the village, he's seen how much Tors has changed and doesn't think he'll be cut out for their mission anymore, and no longer sees Tors as a warrior. I understand completely, but man, I just hate this scene. All my homies hate Loki. Fuck that dude. The only redeeming quality in this scene is when Askeladd's soldier, Bjorn, turns Loki's man hiding behind the tapestry into a human shish kebab to prove a point, making that mutton chop pissively shit his pants. Anyway, Askeladd accepts the deal to kill Tors and makes his way out to the sea. Meanwhile, back at the village, Tors has come up with a clever plan prior to his departure. He decides to take 5 boys who want to fight. Along the journey, they are accompanied by Leif following behind in another boat. His plan is to drop the 5 boys off at Norway with Leif so that they won't have to experience the hells of a war, and only he will go to England. With his departure arriving soon, he searches for Thorfinn but is unable to find him, believing that Thorfinn is so mad at him for leaving him behind he's hiding from him. When time arrives to leave, Thors asks his wife to tell his son how much he loves him and departs for his journey. Once they reach the ocean current and aren't able to turn back, Thors hears Thorfinn call him from the inside of a barrel on the ship. Jumping out of the barrel, Thorfinn rushes to the side of the boat to relieve himself, excited to be on the open ocean. Shortly after this, Thors is seen disciplining Thorfinn for sneaking onto the boat without his permission. Deciding it was too late to turn around, he let Thorfinn stay on the boat and decided to drop him off in Norway with the other boys upon their arrival. Along the way, one of the older boys excited for war asks Thors to tell them all the story of his time in battle. Thors instead tells the older boy his story about having his daughter 15 years ago, and how much it's changed him and made him fear war, making the young man rethink his desire to fight and kill others. Halfway there, they all spot land. These islands are halfway between Greenland and Norway, where they decide it would be best to take a break from the seas and replenish on supplies. Upon their arrival, Leif begins to have second thoughts as he senses something's off, and points out that there is less homes along the bay than he remembers. Thors then orders everyone to row backwards in order to avoid any conflict. However, as they were backing out of the canal, Askeladd's men spring a trap, dropping demolished pieces of homes in the water, creating a makeshift dam preventing Thors' crews from exiting. Thors then hands Thorfinn the same dagger he had cut himself on earlier, and tells him only to use it in order to protect himself. Trapped like rats, 2 other warships row towards them from the other end of the canal. Bjorn then eats a mushroom and questions Askeladd if he can see how Thors fights firsthand. Then Thors leaps from his own ship to Bjorn's. A few of Askeladd's men, frightened by him, try to attack Thors but are quickly set to power-saving mode. Bjorn, who ate a berserker mushroom, becomes belligerent and begins attacking his own men. Meanwhile, archers on standby aiming down at Thors, waiting for Askeladd's signal to fire, becoming impatient. Thors defeats Bjorn, wiping out the entire first ship of enemies, and challenges Askeladd to a duel of honor, in which if he wins, Askeladd needs to withdraw his troops and leave them all alone. Askeladd accepts the duel and uses the mast of the ship to sneak attack Thors. He connects, but his cut is too shallow to kill him. Thors then turns the duel into a one-sided battle, overwhelming Askeladd in his rapid attacks. However, Askeladd notices a pattern in Thors' attacks. He's trying to break his sword. Knowing this information, he uses it to Uno reverse card Thors and breaks his sword. Having the advantage, he moves to make a finishing blow, but this is what Thors was anticipating the entire time. When Askeladd swings wide, Thor punches his arm, stunning him and taking his sword. After winning the duel, Thors refuses to kill Askeladd and asks him to admit defeat. He says, however, he can't do that with all of his men watching him. This causes Bjorn to jump over to Thors' ship and begin holding Thorfinn hostage with his own dagger. He orders Thors to drop his sword. And once again, to give you a better idea of how well put together this scene is, I ask that you please just watch it.
アシェラット、お前たちは決闘の作法を乱した。この勝負、俺の勝ちだ。
どっちでもいいさ。俺の狙いはあんたの弾だ。
分かってる。
承知した。この決闘はあんたの勝ちだ。
This scene and the lead up to it are just devastating, and I'm not embarrassed to say I knew it was coming and still cried my eyes out. Brutal. Just brutal. This moment will be cemented into Thorfinn's brain forever. From this moment forward, it is the tipping point of the iceberg when Thorfinn's childlike wonder dies with his father that day. And in seeking revenge in the chaos, he stashes himself onto the boat his father died on, and is unknowingly towed away by Askeladd and his crew. But in these few hours, his rage boils inside of him and eats him alive. His eyes lost their shimmer and became focused and dilated, his muscles tensed and spasmed, and his lungs filled with hot air screams out a vow to kill Askeladd in order to avenge his father. These moments felt so rushed, but in all honesty, it just makes sense. I think the writers were trying to captivate how quick a switch can flip in all of us, sending us into madness, spiraling deeper and deeper into despair, and giving in to the rage inside all of us.
お前も殺してやる絶対に殺してやるぶっ殺してやるぞ殺してやる
Did I see it all before? All the dreams I used to explore. 'Cause now it seems like I cannot feel a thing from the same before my eyes. When I look back every time, deep inside, I feel like there's nothing at all. Did I see it all before? All the dreams I used to explore. 'Cause now it seems like I cannot feel a thing. When I look back every time, deep inside, I feel like there's nothing at all.
Hey, if you like this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting to let me know you enjoyed this style of video, and will let me know to continue the series.